Welcome to the Back to Health podcast, where we share inspirational stories of hope to help you reclaim your health. If you're suffering from a chronic condition and have been given little to no hope, if you've been told that there's nothing wrong with you, but you know there definitely is something wrong, or if you're just trying to be preventative and want to know how to reclaim your health, then this podcast is for you. I can't wait to share today's episode. Hello and welcome to the Back to Health podcast. Today we're talking about postpartum depression, anxiety and self-care. Now my guest is a wife, mum, entrepreneur and just everyday woman. She initially started her business as a way to create healthier desserts, but after giving birth, she experienced severe postpartum depression coupled with severe anxiety. This completely changed her outlook on life and mirrored her business to do the same. I'm so happy to connect with her today, as her mission is to connect with women who may be going through the same thing and be the glimmer of hope that she wished that she had. Welcome to the show, Angelle. Hi, Angelle. So today we have a very big topic to talk about, and when we first connected, I was really excited to see sort of like what you had to share in this space, because I think there's so many things in motherhood that get entangled, and we sort of feel like when you become a mother, yes, like you as a person and your identity, like that shifts, right? I mean, that's unquestionable.
Right.
But then you think about things like your work and your career and your
Yeah.
business, depending on what you're working on, and then your health as well. Like all these things become impacted. Like becoming a mother is not like a singular thing. It's not like it just impacts
Mhm.
one part of you. It's like like
Exactly.
everything that you've known up until that point almost like gets
Right.
impacted and shifts. And I think sometimes we don't understand the full extent or the magnitude of what it means to become not just a mother but a parent as well. It's like it's not
Right.
just that you're responsible for this life and you have to clothe it and feed it and keep it warm and safe and all the things that come
Right.
with a little person, but there's all these things about yourself that you have to confront and face and
Mhm.
understand and almost like take apart all the pieces and then rebuild yourself all over again. So I think your story speaks to so much of that. And I'd really love to just start from, like start with your story and just sort of like where you found yourself and how you had to sort of rebuild. And your
Yeah.
story is a really great place to start.
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. It was so lovely to connect with you. And I was kind of reading a little bit more about your story and felt like this would be a really, really good kind of connection and way to broadcast it out to people who might be going through either the same thing or found themselves in similar situations. So, as Rushani had mentioned, my name is Angelle and I am the owner and founder of Healthy Vibes. I will get into that a little bit later, but basically, when I started my business initially, I had started my business under the pretense that I wanted to offer like healthier desserts and stuff like that, healthier options. There weren't really that many like delicious options at the time that were healthy. Like all of them tasted like cardboard and it
Yeah.
was just awful. So for me, I really wanted to create something that tasted good, but also you didn't have to feel guilty about consuming it. So I went ahead and I created kind of like a range of mixes, a range of desserts, and they kind of evolved over time. But some years into the business, I had a baby with my husband, and I just felt really, initially I felt fine, right? And then maybe 3 months after I gave birth is when it all hit me, right? Like I literally felt like my life was in shambles. I had no energy. I had no will to do anything. I had no interest in anything. Like something as simple as like raising up my arm to like shower or something like that just seemed almost impossible for me. Like it was the combination of the lack of energy with the fact that I had a newborn to take care of, a baby to take care of. And I was actually quite surprised because I thought that I had kind of missed that hump, right? In that period, I thought I had missed it because I'm like, I'm 3 months, after giving birth. So why am I having these feelings? So I started having additional symptoms and I started having like really bad headaches. I started having extreme anxiety. I started having really bad panic attacks. I started, like I said, I had really, really bad fatigue, really bad weakness. I just started feeling like I literally was falling apart. I was having night sweats. I just was having so many like a huge range of symptoms. And I was sure that there was something wrong with me, right? Like I did not attribute this to postpartum anxiety or depression. Like I was just sure that surely I need to get some bloods done and they're going to tell me that there's something wrong and I'm dying. And, so
Yeah.
this is how it ends. And so I, called the doctor, booked in for some bloods, did a physical, did everything. And they were like, okay, well, we've got your results back and, everything looks fine. And I'm like, no, I'm sure of it. Like, I'm sure I'm dying. I'm sure that there's something going on. Like, do more tests. I do not feel myself. And so then, the physician had asked me, she was like, have you considered the fact that maybe you just have, postpartum depression? And I was like, no. I said, I don't feel sad. I just don't feel like myself, right? I just don't feel together, right? I was having really bad depersonalization. I felt like I was floating all the time. Like I literally felt like I was living in a transverse universe. Like it was
Yeah.
just awful. Like a parallel universe is what I felt like I was in. Like I would be doing activities, I wouldn't even be present. Like it just was awful. So I think for people who don't experience any sort of depression or anxiety or postpartum events, right? They might not be sure with what that looks like. And I want to make it clear that that looks different for everybody, right? That
Mm.
could be you being in your bed for 4 days, you not wanting to shower. It could simply be you losing interest in things that you used to have an interest in.
Yeah.
And I just strongly feel if I knew more people who went through what I went through, or if more people spoke out, right, about what I went through, then I feel like would feel more um, people would feel more related, right? They wouldn't feel so alone. And
Yeah.
I think that period of time was so isolating and so sad for me because none of my other friends had kids. Nobody that I was close to had kids or had small kids or had went through that. So I just started kind of looking up videos on YouTube and stuff like that. And then I would figure out like, okay, so this is what's happening. The doctors claim that everything is fine, but I know
Yeah.
I'm not fine. So I need to figure out what is going to make me fine, right? What is going to make me feel better? What is going to make me feel a little bit more like myself? So, I kind of started branching into more natural remedies as far as kind of solutions for kind of battling, right? Kind of almost like I felt like I wasn't going to war, right? Like I needed to
Mm.
connect and make these tools, right? I needed a toolbox, right? That of things that were going to make me feel more like me, make me really reconnect to myself. And granted, yes, like a lot of it was hormonal, right? And there's certain things that you just can't do about the hormones, right? It's your body kind of regulating. But how can I assist my body in regulating and getting back on track,
Yeah.
right? After giving birth. So, I noticed that, and this is going to sound really crazy, but I noticed whenever I would shower, right, I would feel so much better. Like I would take a
Mm.
shower and I'd be like, oh my gosh,
I
like
feel human again. I feel
yeah,
real.
I feel a little bit better, and I noticed like I started taking 2 showers a day and I would be like, I just, and I was in the shower and the water would just be hitting me and I didn't think about anything. I didn't worry about bottles. I didn't worry about what my husband was doing. I didn't worry about work or needing to feel or anything, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
literally that was like my time in the shower, right? And so I noticed how much better I felt after taking a shower. So I was like, okay, is it the shower itself that I like, or is it the setting aside time for myself that I like,
Like that feels like
So-
self-care, like I'm looking after myself and I'm yeah.
yeah, right. And I was just like, okay, I need to do more of this. I need to get back to it. So then I started like working out, right? And so I would put the baby down for a nap and I would have, my husband would watch the baby while I would go out and I would do this workout and I would do it outside because I always realized that anytime I was outside, I always felt better. It was just
Mm.
something about getting the sun and, the sun hitting my skin and getting some vitamin D.
Yeah.
And I would go outside. I would feel better. I'd work out outside. I would feel better. So then I'm like, okay, I have hot showers, I have workouts, I have walks, I have these things outside. So then I started kind of building like my own little arsenal of tools to really help me combat things that I was going through. I also started journaling, and I realized that when I would journal, the things that repeatedly kept coming up for me were things that really needed to be addressed, right? And I really needed to figure out, why is it that this is happening to me, and what can I do, right? What steps can I take to avoid this in the future so it doesn't happen? And even if it does happen, it's not at such a height,
Yes.
right?
It's not as deep or
So
triggering as it would. Yeah.
exactly. And so that's a good word, a good keyword is, it's a trigger, right?
Mm,
What is triggering these feelings, right? And what can I do to avoid these triggers?
yeah.
So, um, during this time, like I said, like I kind of really truly discovered self care. And I think that people always assume that self care is like, oh, just painting your nails,
Mhm.
and self care is maybe doing your hair. But it's like, no, like self care really encompasses anything that makes you feel more alive. In
Yeah.
my opinion, is how I view it. And that can look so different for everybody. Self care could literally be taking a walk for one person, it could be spending time with their family for the next, Everybody's self care looks so different. So I always try to encourage people to do more of what makes them feel alive,
Yeah.
do more of what makes them feel like them, and do more of the things that they feel they enjoy. So if that's painting your nails and getting your hair done, then by all means do it. If that's getting a massage, then by all means do it. But for me, I know personally, for my self-care, I value spending alone time,
Mm,
time to reflect, um, meditations, yoga, things that help me feel more grounded, getting outside for my walks,
yeah.
and really just being present, right? Sometimes, I'll have to do a social media detox and just really take time away, because we don't realize, right, how many things we are subconsciously picking up in the outside world, right? We don't realize how much we are affecting ourselves and our bodies by stuff that we are just simply consuming.
Yes.
And that could be consuming physically what you're eating, or that could be consuming while you're having a nice scroll on social media or
Yeah.
whatever that might be. And so I really started looking after myself. And when I say looking after myself, I mean in all aspects, right? I started kind of trying to look a little bit more presentable, because I felt better when I looked a little bit more presentable. I tried to do my best to really look after my fitness, right? What does my fitness look like? How many steps am I getting? Things like that. And I really, really, really started to notice, it didn't happen overnight, of course, but I really started to notice improvements and ways that I was starting to really feel much better about myself. And so when it came to my own business, although surely, of course, I still, believe in eating clean. And I think that that really contributes to a form of self-care and really looking after yourself. And I
Yeah.
think you always notice such a difference when you do it. But I really, really started to align with mental health and self-care. And that is where I kind of found myself at. And that it's May. And for those who don't know, May is Mental Health
Health
Awareness
awareness month.
Month. Yes, and it's a really important month to me, because I feel a lot of times that people are so scared to talk about their mental health. There's a really huge stigma around mental health and looking after yourself. I think, I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were telling me that, it's like really looked down upon. So here in the States, it's extremely looked down upon when you take time off, right?
Mm,
Say even if you just want to take a few days off to just spend with your family, reconnect, look after yourself, it's like, no. They are like, absolutely not, like And I think that that's absolutely ridiculous. And then I think that that correlates to why we have such high incidences and rates of depression and,
Yes.
mental health disorders and all types of things, that are really probing our community. And it makes me upset because I feel so passionately about it, because I just don't feel like humans are set up to be working like this, right? Humans are not supposed to work 40 hours a week and
No.
then, only have weekends off to collect themselves and run all their errands and grocery shop and do everything else that you have to do. Then we come into the aspect of, a global pandemic, right? That is ravaging the world. That's also, another thing to look after with our mental health and to consider with our mental health. I think that 2020 was such a huge year for people that, um, that I think it kind of pushed people to really, whether they liked it or not, I think it put people in a very uncomfortable position
Yeah.
to really face, face the issues that they use work, that they use being busy, that they use all of these other things
Yes.
to,
Very.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To really ignore, right, and address the problems that really need to be addressed. And I think that 2020 really showed us, and even now, right, where I mean, we're still, the pandemic's
Yeah.
not done, but I think that this period of time is really showing us what really matters and what really doesn't, right?
Yeah, I think there's such a big reset in the world in general about like we had all this time where we're almost forced to spend time with our families and deal with the
Yeah.
whatever the different issues were, and like have to spend time with our kids and be the only caregivers for our kids. So it would be the mental support, the emotional support, the
Yeah.
physical support, the educators, the
Yeah.
feed them. And normally you had a whole support system to help you with all those
Yeah.
roles. And then you realize, well, you get a bit more of an appreciation, I think, for the people who are helping you do those things. Like, oh my god, that they really took a whole load off me, and I'm doing all these things right now. But
Mhm.
also, like, which bits am I doing well, and which bits am I not doing well in? Because I need to look at myself, I need to address those issues, and I sort of need to do that.
Right.
But then on the other side, you have the mums in the pandemic, the ones who have given birth in a pandemic and not
Yeah.
had their usual support system, so they don't even know what it feels like. Yeah, as a parent, I have an amazing support system, but obviously in the pandemic, it was just like me, my husband, and then our kids.
Yeah.
And so we had to do all of it. We were both working, we were both educating, both feeding. But it really helped us in our marriage, I think, to like balance that even more. Like, because my husband would
Yeah.
always go to the office and I work from home, even though we have a very equal marriage, it's also about,
Mhm.
well, who's at home? I'm around, so I'll be the one that has to juggle work and the kids and everything else. But then when we're both home, it helped us get a bit of rebalance. And I find that for the mums who had given birth in the pandemic, they don't know what it felt like to have a support system in the first place, because they started their journeys without the support system at all. So actually, I don't know if there's sort of two sides to that coin. In one instance, it's kind of good because that couple have to figure out their balance. You don't have the grandma coming in or somebody else coming in and sort of taking that
Right.
responsibility, because sometimes then the dad sort of feels like they got to take a step back because family members are coming in and helping in. So in some ways, it helps to set you off on that right equal footing from the beginning, because there's only two of you and you both got to pitch in and do the work. But on the other hand, for when you're really desperate and you do need that break and you do need a bit of support, the support system isn't there, and you're sort of like looking for energy, or like having to dig really deep for resources that maybe you don't have in yourself at that point. um
Yeah.
what was your experience of sort of postpartum depression in general, like during, and mental health, like during the pandemic, from the women that you were working with?
So, something that is very interesting is that I actually gave birth right when things were like starting to
uh
like just hit the fan. So, I actually gave birth right around March 2020. And that's just when like the lockdown, things were going into lockdown. That's just when like it was just it was actually, looking back at it, it was really actually a surreal time when I think about it, because I actually did not have any outside support because I couldn't have any outside
Yeah.
support, right?
Yeah.
We weren't aware of exactly like the origin of this, virus. And like there was just so many unknowns at the time. So it could only be my husband and I at the hospital. So there was nobody who could come visit,
Yeah.
nobody who could come see us, nobody who could come be there, which I think worked out for me a little bit. But
Stuff.
I was okay with that. Yeah. But, but it still was such a different experience, I think, versus before. And I think that also contributed and had a playing factor to my postpartum depression because we were locked in, right? We couldn't do anything, like we couldn't go anywhere. And that was actually okay for me, in the sense that I actually really enjoy being at home. I'm actually like more of a homebody. I love being at home with my family. So I was okay with that. But I think for me, it was the lack of like family support, because the
Yeah.
family can't come around and help. It was the unknown, right? It was the fear of, what if one of us gets sick or
Yeah.
whatever. So I think it was the unknowns that was really triggering me. And something that I think is really important to remember is that I think one thing that really can trigger a lot of people when it comes to anxiety and depression is the fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
And something that I think is essential to remember is that we can only control what we can control, right?
Yeah.
I can't control what's happening tomorrow, right? Because we're not in tomorrow. I can only worry about what I can control and what's happening right now, here and today. And so I would just tell myself, during that period, I would just tell myself, I'd say, you know what? The only thing that I can control is, raising a healthy child, or doing my best to raise a healthy child, and what's happening in my household, just doing our best to stay safe, and doing our best to, um, you know, avoid getting sick, but just dealing with the ramifications of being sick. If we do get sick, what are we going to do, right? What's the absolute worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
So I think that once I started looking at things with that mindset, then the fear, I won't say it completely went away, but it did dissipate some. And I think that helped because I was able to enjoy more of my postpartum experience and really use that time to bond with my family, as a family of 3, and really, count our blessings and just understand that things could definitely be worse.
And then in terms of just sort of going back to maybe some of the symptoms that you were experiencing, like when
Mhm.
you did find out that that's what you were suffering from, because I guess the first time you went to you get all your bloods done, you get all your physical done, and I think sometimes,
Mhm.
although it sounds ironic, being told there's nothing wrong or everything is fine can be
Yeah.
actually the worst news that you can hear from a doctor. Like it's ironic because sometimes obviously you don't want to hear bad news, but at the same time, when you're experiencing all these symptoms and you're told everything's fine, you're like,
You
is
want
this
answers.
yeah, like
Yeah.
is this in my head? Am I imagining things? And the very same thing happened to me. Like I had unexplained fatigue and unexplained weight gain. I was losing my hair. I was like really struggling with brain fog, and I had these left-sided
Oh,
migraines. And it was over a 5-year period. And I went back like every year, like I'm feeling worse, like worse than when I last saw you. And we do the bloods all over again, and we check for thyroid, and we check for all these things. And
yeah.
no, everything's fine. And it's like I don't know what's wrong with me, but I know something's wrong with me. And you almost feel even more desperate when you're told everything's fine than even if they just, I'm like, please just tell me it's something, and then I know what it is, I can deal with it, I can look up what the potential treatment might be, and I can
Right.
figure out a plan of how to get myself back. When you tell me nothing's wrong, I have no idea like where to start. I have no idea where to go. And I think a lot of women find themselves in this position because either depression is just diagnosed like too early, too quickly, like, oh, you're depressed, or it's like you're going back and you're asking for answers and you just keep being told nothing's wrong with you, nothing's wrong with you, nothing's wrong with you, and something is definitely wrong with you. So I just want to talk to a little bit about like where depression comes from, or like, sort of like the sources of it. And we find now like more and more research that shows that depression is linked to our gut and the condition of our gut and the microbiome and how much good bacteria we have in our gut. And so
Mhm.
birth does alter or can alter our microbiome, or the hormonal imbalances that we have after birth also can affect our microbiome. And so it's when that microbiome is out of balance that we, because it's our gut brain connection and it affects our moods and it affects all those things, that's where this can come from. So I urge anyone that if you feel you have some sort of like there's something wrong, you know something's wrong, but you keep being told nothing's wrong with you or your bloods are okay, look at your gut, because that could be potentially where these issues are coming from. And when your gut's not in balance, nothing in your body is really in imbalance, because it sort of controls, like that's where your health sort of starts
Right.
almost. So
Right.
nutrition after, and one of the things I've then become really passionate about is nutrition during and after pregnancy, because you tend to eat really well when you're pregnant, right? You know, you're so conscious, I've got a little person inside, but I need to do everything I can to make sure that they have the best environment. I'm gonna not drink this, I'm not gonna eat this, I'm gonna be really good.
Well, some people.
Yes, yeah. Or you have the cravings, and then you saw,
Yeah.
but you know, as much as you possibly can, you want to do your you want to do your best. But then almost like once you've got the baby out of you, it's like, well, the baby's outside of me, so now like I can eat what I, you know, I can do what I want. And you maybe like if you were trying to sort of like control yourself and limit yourself during pregnancy, you sort of like then start going back into, maybe I'll have a burger, maybe I'll have some, you know, maybe I'll have some of these things that are not really that good for me. And if you weren't eating very well during pregnancy, it's a bit like, but now I can eat it without the guilt because I'm not, you know, like the baby's not there as well. And I feel like that potentially is like one side of postpartum depression that isn't talked about enough in terms of like the nutrition side of it and actually what is going into your body. And when you're a new mom, it's not easy to like get the meals ready and eat well and always, you know, you eat the quickest thing, the easiest thing that you can get. And for me, like midnight snack when I was breastfeeding my kids was always like digestive biscuits was the easiest thing that was there, and it was like quick and I can just put them in my mouth, and I'm starving because I'm feeding like every 2 hours, and it's not easy to find like healthy snacks, or like go make a salad in the middle of the night, or you know, like go boil some eggs at 4 o'clock in the morning because you've, you know, you've run out of boiled eggs or whatever. So whatever's quick, whatever's easy. And I think that side of the self-care, or that side of your support system, that's where it really comes in. And it really made me think about the women in the pandemic, where it's not so much that you even need someone to just sit, pat your shoulder and tell you you're doing a good job or take the baby off you, but even if someone could just like prepare your meals and just like have healthy food, like have good food around for you, and take that sort of pressure off, I think it makes such a big difference. And you know, when they say like it's rising, it's like our diets are contributing to so much of that, and actually there's not enough education around the nutrition, postpartum nutrition, and how that can also be linked to postpartum depression as well. But I'd love to dive more into sort of like, so where has that sort of world taken you now? Because I guess part of me does always believe that sometimes we're given challenges, or we're given things that we need to work through because there's a bigger purpose for that, because we work through those things, we learn from them, we grow, but then we're able to share and we're able to inspire and help other people with it. So I know that you've gone on quite an interesting journey since you've been through the sort of depression side of things.
Definitely. So I love this. I really, really love this question because, like I had said, I feel like I've kind of aligned like my whole life with this newfound journey, right? So
Yeah.
when I was experiencing this, I felt like there was no hope for me. I was sure that I actually had no idea how I was going to continue on. Every day felt impossible. I didn't even want to think about tomorrow.
Yeah.
I just needed to figure out how I was going to get through the day. I felt awful. I didn't have any help. Then I also had a newborn who was depending on me that I needed to take care of. I was breastfeeding. I still had to, you know, and I think also that's like a whole nother thing, but I think also postnatal depletion had something to do with it as well.
Yes.
Um, but it's just so much, right? And I feel like women are such warriors, you know, and I just feel like they don't get enough recognition. I don't feel like they get
Yes.
enough praise. I don't feel like they get anything enough that they deserve, because we really go through so much, and a lot of times in secrecy, right? A
Yes.
lot of times there's people don't even know what is happening, right? And you leave your house, you have to put on a smile, you know, you might even be crying and might cry in the shower, come out, put on a smile, go to work, go face the day, go, you know, take care of your kids, whatever you have to do. And that is amazing. And I don't think, I feel so proud to be a woman because I know what we have to do on a daily basis. And something for me that my journey has really, really helped me with is, like I had said before, is alignment. I feel like, not that I don't think I had a purpose before, or like, you know, that people didn't like my healthy desserts and stuff like that. I think that they did. But I feel because I had that experience and because I went through postpartum depression and nothing seemed like it was going to help, but eventually it all worked out, I had to share the tools, right? I had to share those tools that I learned, those coping mechanisms, those journaling prompts, those habit tracking methods, all of those things. I had to share those. The importance of self care, what actually self care looked like, the importance of your mental health, all of these things completely aligned with me, and I completely rebranded my business. I completely changed the selections and the offerings of our products, and I did it more so with a focus on cognitive behavioral therapy, and also with the focus on mental health and self-care, because to me, without those things, you are nothing, right?
Yeah.
I There's no way that you can go through this life and not look after those things, because you'll be in shambles, right? And if people started talking more about these things more openly, then people wouldn't have to fight these battles in secrecy. And I want there to be an open, honest, transparent community that really dives and delves and talks about these things openly, without shame, without the judgment, without all of those hindrances, right? So that people can get the help that they need. And
Yeah.
while I speak of help, journaling, looking after your self care, taking care of yourself, eating right, exercising, all of these things are amazing tools. But I also encourage people who maybe do not find success with those tools to also consider medication if they must, right? The main thing is that there's your mental health that needs to be looked after, right? And if you can't look after your mental health, you can't look after your self-care. It's just a huge domino effect. You can't do anything. And you are not productive. You are not anything when those things are not aligned. And so I hate that there's such a huge stigma on medication as well. I find definitely if you can avoid it, right, and you can try, natural and holistic alternatives, of course, do those first. But if you get to the end of the road and you feel it's not working for you, then there's brilliant medications, right, that you can take, that you don't have to stay on for too long, that you can do a low dose of, and really still look after yourself while you're getting yourself back on track with those. And like I said, you don't have to stay on them forever. And I think that if there wasn't such a stigma on medication as well as mental health, then people could also get the help that they need as well. Because I've seen and I've met plenty of women who are like, oh, I don't want to get on, any medication. I don't want to gain weight. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. And I'm like, oh, trust me, girlfriend, I don't want to gain weight either. Okay. But if it means that my mental health is going to be intact, if it means I'm going to be happy and, I'm going to be able to do the things that I need to do right for me and my family, then by all means, it'll just be happy weight,
Yeah.
So I
Uh,
just don't want people to feel, um, I don't want people to feel discouraged, not being able to get the help that they need because of maybe fear of judgment of taking a medication, fear of judgment of needing medication, whatever that looks like for you. My biggest thing is that I always just want people to feel their best mentally and make sure that they're looking after their self-care. And like I said, whatever that looks like, that's how it looks like for you.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for raising that point, because I think it is important. Like, anyone listening to this podcast will know, and who follows my show will know that I obviously promote natural and holistic methods
Yes.
first. But
Yeah.
that's sort of saying explore all your options and try all the different things that you can before, like, my thing is, only just don't go for a medication first approach, because there
Yeah.
may be
Yeah.
very simple things that you can do
Yeah.
that may just solve the problem without needing to go to medication. But just as you said, Angelle, like, if you feel like, actually, I have tried all the things, and I have tried all the different methods, and I've become really informed, and actually maybe for me it is just a chemical imbalance and I do need the medication to
Yeah.
help me sort that, then I totally agree with you that there should be no stigma and no judgment about that, because even people from the natural and holistic world totally understand that for some people that might not be the right route, and actually medication then is a necessity,
Of course.
while you are sort of like, getting yourself back on track. So I want people to know that judgment is not there. It's just that be informed and understand what all the options are, so that you can choose and
Exactly.
find what the right one is for you. And as long as you've done, as long as you get that information, then you're the one that is best placed over any doctor, any
Mhm.
specialist, anyone. You are the person that understands you yourself and your body the best to make that
Yeah.
decision about what is right for you. Um,
Exactly. And I always give there's an affirmation that I love to use, and it is that I trust that I will always make the best decisions for me,
I love that. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I'll say it one more time, and I trust that I will always make the best decisions for me. And like I said, it does not matter what might work for me, might not work for you, right?
Exactly.
What might work for Sally might not work for Sarah. So it's just like you have to do what's best for you, and only you actually genuinely know what's
Yes,
best for you, you know?
exactly.
Just like, it goes back to your birthing experience. Just like when you were like, no, I want it to be this way, right? This is what is best for me. And the doctor's like, no, we think, and it's like, no, no, I'm telling you what is best
Yeah,
for me. I know what's best for me, and I can consult with you when I need you, you know?
exactly.
So don't ever feel bad for doing what's best for you. And that goes, and like I said, in my brand, in my business, we cover all of these things, right? We don't just stop there. We talk about your relationships, right? What do your relationships look like? Because that contributes to your mental health and
Yes.
self-care as well. What does, your life look like? What do your surroundings look like? What do your routines look like? Do you have a routine, right?
Mm,
What thoughts do you find are constantly coming up for you? Like, what are your fears? Like, are they rational? Are they irrational? Does your anxiety have a root cause? Does it not?
yeah.
There's so many different aspects of your mental health that have to be addressed first before you can do anything else.
Yes.
And that's why I think it is so important to really, really, really look after yourself, really, really, really look after your mind, be intentional about the time that you're spending and where you're spending it,
Mm,
be intentional about just everything that you do. And I think once you start to actually be intentional and do things with more mindfulness, then you'll find that a lot of the things that you were doing before, you didn't even have to do. They don't matter.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I think a lot of things change when you become a parent. And I think especially the way you use your time is one of the biggest, because it's like, if I'm doing this, it has to be worth being away from my children or spending time with my children or doing stuff that, it's like
Yeah.
everything I choose to do is like, well, I used to do those things. I'm not going to do those things anymore, because they don't matter to
Mhm.
me. They don't matter
Mhm.
in the grand scheme of things. And so I need to be much more mindful about how I spend my time. And I'm only going to do things that actually they have to be really valuable for me to take time away from my kids, for me to like put my energy into doing them.
Exactly.
And so you become so much more mindful about the way you create stuff and the energy and the people that you're spending your time with. And all of those things do such amazing things for your mental health, because then you're living intentionally all the time. You're in good energy all the time. And that just
Right.
lifts you, because you feel like I'm contributing to things that align with me and my values and my purpose.
Mhm.
I'm not just turning up to a job that I really hate, that I have to spend like 8 hours at every day, and I'm thinking about my kids and like, oh, I haven't done this for them and I need to do this for them, but I don't have the freedom to do, because I'm stuck at my desk doing punching numbers in or whatever I'm doing. So yeah, I think that is such a big part of the mental health puzzle as well. And sometimes, or one thing for me that really became apparent when I became a mum was my wild view. So many things that maybe like I was aware of but didn't really affect me on a deeper level, like emotionally, suddenly started really worrying me when I became a mum. And I think, although I didn't have postnatal depression, I definitely had like this whole sense of panic. Like I had this underlying anxiety, definitely, about the world and the state of the world. And oh my god, I brought a child into this world, and there's all these horrible things going on. Like, what have I done? And
I know.
this whole underlying anxiety of, oh no, but I need to fix this before they grow up, and I need to fix that before they grow up, and I need to try and do something
Yeah.
about this before they grow up, because I don't want my children to live in a world that is
Yeah.
like this, and where this happens, and this is a
I
norm.
need
And
to save the world.
exactly. It is that whole I need to save the world anxiety, and time is running out. Like, when you're a mom, you're
Yeah.
just like, time is running out because my kid's going to be 1, and then they're going to be 2, and then
Yes.
they're going to understand this thing. And then when they're 5, they're going to understand this, and they're going to get to school when they're this age. So I need to fix school before they get to school. And you have this, it's this, yeah, this constant anxiety that keeps you up at night, where you're just like, oh, what have I done? Like, this poor innocent soul, I've brought them into this horror
I
and this
know.
nightmare of what this world is. And I feel like sometimes that is where a lot of our anxiety as mums can stem from. And it can also like lead very easily into the spiraling sort of condition of you're not getting enough sleep, and then you're depleted. I'd love to speak a bit more about postnatal depletion, because I think a lot of people aren't as aware about postnatal depletion as they are about postnatal depression. And I'd love to bring a bit of awareness to that. So could you just like sort of speak to that a little bit as
Yeah,
well?
of course. So, okay, so my experience with postnatal depletion was, first off, I didn't even know it was a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I was going through all of these symptoms, I just started, of course, Googling things, which don't spend too much time on Google because you give yourself
I'm
a heart
dying.
attack.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's just like the first thing that, like, one of the first things that came up was postnatal depletion. And I was like, oh, I've never heard about this. Like, what
Mm.
is postnatal depletion? So I was looking into it, looking into it, looking into it. And I found that postnatal depletion is basically, you think about it, you're growing this child for 9 months, right? And then this child comes out, well, more than 9 months, but this child comes out. And then they start sucking out all the nutrients, that you have left from growing them for the past 9.5 months, 10 months, or whatever it is. And then you're just like, okay, so there's nothing for me left. That's
Yes.
great. And so it's so exhausting. And for me, basically what they talk about with postnatal depletion is they talk about, essentially what it's called is that all of your nutrients are depleted, and it goes into a further depletion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have this child who's basically taking all the life out of you, like
Yeah.
all the extra nutrients out of you. And more than likely you are not replacing those, right? Because think about it. When you're well, at least for me, when I was a first time mom, or when you're a mom in general and just given birth, what is your main focus? Your main focus is that baby,
Yeah.
and feeding the baby. And so for me, I know I was so depleted with nutrients because I wasn't even really eating as much as I should have been,
Yeah.
because I was just so busy. I wasn't drinking enough water. I really was not looking after myself in terms of um, nutrition. No way, because I was up. I was just worried about feeding that baby,
Yeah.
keeping the baby clean, keeping the baby alive, and
Yes.
everything else could, be off in the background. But that, I think, because I did not take care of myself, and I know it's really, really, really difficult to care for yourself as a mom,
Yeah.
especially with a small baby. I 150% understand, and I know, and I agree. But even if it's just something as, getting your partner a little bit more involved, so he or she or whatever can come and care for the baby while you take 30 minutes that you need. Like I said, when I would go out and I would do like my little exercises
Yeah.
and stuff like that, I would make my husband take the baby for a little bit. I would make my husband take the baby when I just needed some time to just be alone. Maybe, that like I said, that time we couldn't really leave the house or do anything. So I started watching a lot of like vlogs and stuff like that. And I just felt like they would be travel vlogs. And so I would just watch little like travel YouTube videos, and it would make me happy because it was just like it was like taking me
Escapism.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was like mentally taking me somewhere else, and I would just do that. And and then I found I started baking a lot in quarantine and trying a lot of different recipes, which also came along with its weight gain, but that's okay. Everybody gained the quarantine 15. And so I really, found that postnatal depletion, it's a real thing, and there's a guy, I think he's over in Australia, and he does a course about it, I think it is. And you can definitely get some more. He has a page, I forgot the name of it, but you can definitely get some really good information. I was reading a lot of his stuff, a lot of his content, and it really helped. But definitely, if you are postpartum, while you're pregnant, even if you're not pregnant, even if you have no plans to ever have a child, or whatever that looks like for you, make sure that you're definitely always staying on top of your nutrients.
Yes.
B12 is a huge one. You can get, oh, and then I started getting these tingles, right?
Yes.
That was another
Yes.
symptom.
Yeah.
I started getting this like tingles and this numbness in my fingers, my arms, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, what is this?" And that was really scary, right? And because these symptoms, I think that they also correlate to more anxiety and more
Yes.
depression, because
Yes.
you don't know what's going on, right? And you just want answers, but then you're still having these symptoms, so you're having to work through these symptoms to find answers, and it's awful, and my heart goes out to anybody that is in that space right now. But
Yeah.
yes, those tingles were a huge one. The depersonalization was a huge one for me. And B12, my B12 and my vitamin D did end up being a little bit low.
Mm.
So I was, definitely needed to,
Supplement with
supplement.
that. Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where, going back to the point about when you're told nothing's wrong with you, but you're like, I literally am losing sense in my
Yes.
fingertips. Like something is wrong with, something is wrong. And I think like a lot of these things, if we don't share these stories, women don't know that it happens. Like you're not the only person that's experiencing these symptoms, because it can feel like that. You can feel like when you're Googling, like either I'm dying, or I'm hallucinating. Like which one is it? Like am I, like there's something seriously wrong with me because I've got some like chronic issue, or I'm hallucinating and I've got all these symptoms, that maybe the sleep deprivation is so bad I'm imagining these things happening. So like any sense of that, this is why it's so important to me to share these stories, because the more people that speak out about it, the more people that share these stories and say I had this and I had this, and even if you can see like a glimpse of your story in somebody else's, it makes you then feel like, okay, so maybe it's this, I'll explore this avenue and maybe I can
And
find
it's
out more
more
about this information.
relatable, and it
Yes.
makes it real,
Yes.
it makes it validates whatever you're going through. And I think
Exactly.
that is just invaluable, right? Because when you're going through something and you feel like nobody understands, it is
Yes.
the most lonely and desolate and just sad space. And a lot of times, even your family doesn't understand. They'll be like, okay, like,
Exactly.
I want to help, but I don't,
I
I
don't know
don't know.
how. Yeah, and I don't understand it because
Yeah.
I didn't even when I was having my symptoms and I sort of said to my mom, like, I'm having these, did you ever have anything like this? And her
Yeah.
experience was so different. And she was like,
Yeah.
no. And I'm like, okay, so now I'm by myself. Like, I can't explain it genetically. So it's not something genetic
Yeah.
I've inherited. The doctor's saying nothing's wrong with me. I'm reading stuff online and I have no idea like where to start with all of this. And it feels really overwhelming. But like you said, more than that, it's isolating and it's really quite scary.
Yeah.
And it can really feel like, maybe this is all in my head. The thing that I keep coming back to is like, maybe this is all in my head. Like I'm just so tired that I can't
Yeah.
think straight anymore. Like I just can't keep tabs on what's
Yeah.
happening with me. Like I feel like I've lost tune with my body, but something's obviously not right here. So yeah, like I said, like those nutrients are so important, and going back to our basics, just like getting the basic nutrients in and just making sure that
Yes.
we're getting those, but then also looking at our gut and rebalancing all the
Yeah.
microbiome and making sure we've got good
Yeah.
bacteria to help with that, because pregnancy and birth and all those things do
Yeah.
alter that.
Yeah.
And we do really have to raise awareness to that, because I think not enough people realize just how much of a toll it has on your body. Like you think you're recovered in, like, for some people it's a week, for
Yes.
some people it's 6 weeks, but the
No.
recovery process
Takes
from birth,
years.
I feel like like I've had two kids now, and I had my youngest 3 years ago, and I feel like I'm still recovering and I'm still fixing my body and I'm still having to like work on some of the issues that I've
Yes.
experienced since. So, recovery from having kids is not just like a 6 week thing and then you just go
Right.
back to your life and it's normal. It's almost like a life's work to get yourself back on track. And with that physical repairing of your body comes also your sort of like mental, emotional sort of journey that you go on when you become a parent. And I just want to bring a bit of light to the fact about identity shift, because we talked about
Yeah.
things that you can do when you have postpartum depression or anxiety to make you feel more like yourself, but then that
Yeah.
idea of self has already shifted when you've
Yeah.
become a mum. Like I think a lot of people are trying to search for the self they were before they became a parent, like before they became a mum,
Yeah.
but actually, even to try and feel like yourself, that identity is actually shifted. So sometimes what you're searching for is not even what you can actually go after, because that person doesn't really exist anymore. Does that make sense? Like you are a
And
different person.
I love, love, love that you brought that up, right? Because I think like I like to always say I have multiple identities,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like right? Being a mom is one, right? Being a wife is another, being a sister, all these things, that's being a daughter, all of these things are different identities, right? Because they all serve different purposes for me. Now, something that I do want to mention is you have to align yourself basically with your different identities, right? And you have
Yeah.
to understand that it's okay to understand that your life is going to change, right? But you shouldn't lose the things that make you you, right?
Yes.
So that's why I say you should always have multiple identities, because you still want to be able to identify with yourself, right? You're going to, of course, feeling a little bit different. You're going to have, I mean, you've had a baby, you've changed, maybe you are in a relationship now, or maybe you're married, or whatever that looks like for you. And your identities are going to shift, right? And that's a hard shift, right? From
Yeah.
going from, the least, especially for me, from going to having no kids to having a child. And it's so crazy because sometimes I forget I'm a mom. I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, like I have a whole child,
Yeah.
that's like, depending on me and needs things from me. And like, even because of lockdown and everything, he really didn't go out much. And so we've just recently started like acclimating him to the world and
Yes.
the world outside. And I think we took him out to dinner with us for like the first time. That's the first time he's ever been to a restaurant,
Wow. Yeah.
and he's a year old, so it's just like, then when I was out with him and, people were talking to us, I was like, oh, and they're like, oh, the baby. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, the baby, so it's just about accepting the change and being open to the change, right? And what does that change look like for you? And what are you going to do to ensure that you still stay true to
Yes.
your own identity, right? If you love painting, just because you have a child doesn't mean you should stop painting,
Yeah.
if you love I don't know, camping or something, that doesn't mean because you have a child that you should stop camping. You should still do the things that make you feel like you. And I think that's
Yeah.
so important to maintaining your identity, because if not, you just get lost. You
I,
get lost in life, you get lost in motherhood, you get lost in being a partner, you get lost in everything. And once I feel like being lost is a scary place, right?
Yes. And it's so easy. The other scary thing about it is it's so easy to do. It's so
Very
easy to get
easy.
lost when you're a mom, especially
Mhm.
with a newborn. It's like literally 24/7. Your life
Yeah,
revolves
yeah,
around this little person, and you want to keep them alive and you want to give them your best, and you're thinking about their future, and like you're all consumed with everything to do with that little person. And it is so easy. It is so easy to get lost. So it's really important that partners, especially if you're listening, that if you find that the mother is not easily giving themselves that space or that time,
right,
then that's where I feel that
right.
not just partners but support, the community, whoever is around them, that's where you step in and like, no, you go take 5 minutes and go have a shower, or you go for a 10-minute walk, or do what you need to do. But that is really where the support and community comes in, and not waiting and watching while that person you can see is like sort of running themselves into the ground and getting beyond that
Mhm.
point of like health, sort of health. But thank
Right.
you, this has been such a good conversation in terms of getting to the like
Yeah.
the heart of sort of where some of these issues stem from.
Yeah.
Just before we end, I just wanted to touch very lightly, like we don't have to go into a lot of detail about it, but one thing I wanted to touch on is the sort of almost trauma-like side of postnatal depression. Or even some people have, we now obviously know, like from Megan Markle's interview, and about her talking about depression during pregnancy. So it's not just
Mhm.
postpartum, it can happen to
Right.
you during pregnancy as well. And when people say things like, oh well, she got this detail wrong and she got that detail wrong, and she sort of, I think she misremembered this or that. I think one really important thing to just highlight about this issue in particular is, when you're going
Mhm.
through something like this, things are very heightened, like emotions, your feelings, everything is like super heightened. You are super sensitive, right? And anything that comes at you feels almost like an attack, because you are in this very heightened
Yeah.
natural state of protectiveness over your child. That can happen to you in
Exactly.
pregnancy, and that can happen to you postpartum as well. Like there's no differentiation between that. You have this little person, and unless you've ever had a little person inside you, or you've given birth to one,
Right.
it's very hard to understand what that innate nature feels like, where you just want to do everything
Exactly.
you possibly can to protect that person. And if someone, even if though someone is just saying something like it's verbal, it can feel like an attack. And the second thing is that very important thing that you raised about feeling like you're floating and feeling like you're in a parallel universe. It's almost like you are not physically here, like you're not actually here. And
watching the world like pass you by, like
yes.
literally I felt like it'd be so scary sometimes, even like driving, right? Because you just like your feet
Spaced
don't
out.
even like like, and you're just like, maybe I shouldn't drive, like it just it's very alarming when you're going through these symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And
I can really relate with like that particular feeling of feeling like you're floating and spaced out in a parallel universe. I really relate to that because I did feel like that the first 6 months after I had my first child. I really felt, I was just like, I don't feel like I'm here.
Personalization, and nobody talks about it.
No.
I used to think like maybe this is only happening to me.
Yes.
Like I don't understand. Nobody talks about it, and like I said, I think it's because there's a stigma, right, with talking about it.
And so when people say, sorry.
Yeah.
And when people say that, like she got this detail wrong and she got that date wrong and, Megan Markle didn't remember when this happened. It's like, you've got to understand that when you're going through something like this, the specifics, you are not able to, like, you don't take all the specifics in. You're not able to remember all the specific details. I mean, most of us on a daily basis, just normal human beings who are not going through any of that stuff, we can't remember what's going on, and we get dates wrong and dates mixed up. So to be so harsh and so critical that when someone's going through something like they don't feel like they're on this planet and they're having to deal with all this backlash and all this thing, it is A, traumatic, it is B, heightened because of the sensitivity and the anxiety that you are feeling. So even if it wasn't meant in a way of attack, or it wasn't meant to feel like it wasn't intended to be an attack, it can feel like one. So that's really, really important to understand. It's about how that person perceives what's happening to them, right? And they wouldn't perceive it as an attack if they weren't already in a fight or flight mode and they didn't already feel that they were being threatened by a particular person or group of people or whatever it might be. So there has to be some history there for you to feel like anything that person says is a attack on you. Whether or not it was intended to be attack is a different whole thing. And then the third thing is you are not remembering all the specifics, because as a safety mechanism, what your brain does when you feel unsafe, when you feel you're in a threatening situation, your brain is going to try and block out and not remember things that are traumatic because it wants to keep you safe. So you cannot recollect all the things exactly as they happened. Most of us can't do that anyway, but especially when you're going through depression and trauma and things like that, you cannot recollect everything exactly as it happened. And I just wanted to shed some light on that side of sort of postnatal and pregnancy depression, because this expectation that you should have time stamped every single thing that happened to you, and when someone said something and she got this wrong, and the whole that whole statement of recollections may vary. Yes, of course they will, because we are human beings and we all perceive life we all perceive things differently, and especially when you have heightened sensitivity or anxiety or depression, you are going to perceive something different to other people. So recollections will vary. No one's arguing about that, right? So I think we just need to get that. I just wanted to sort of like really bring that to people's attention, the fact that you have these abnormal expectations, that when people suffer through things like this, there needs to be compassion and there needs to be understanding around why people won't get the exact details exactly right. But it doesn't mean that they didn't suffer through it, and it didn't mean that it wasn't real, and it didn't mean that it didn't happen.
100%. And just respecting other people's journeys, right?
Exactly. It's like, you don't have to believe it, you don't have to have gone through it, you don't have to even understand it, but what you need to do is give that person space to be able to share, so that if there are other people who are experiencing it or going through it or feeling the same, that they get the help and the inspiration and the support that they need. It doesn't affect you, then you are lucky, because you didn't have to deal with that issue, and you never had to deal with that heartbreak, and you never had to deal with the feelings and the emotions that came with it. Then you are fortunate. So if you're fortunate, you then need to be quiet and move aside and allow the people that need that support and need that help and need that information to be able to get that information. Because by sort of like dumping and sitting on somebody that is brave enough to share their story or their experience, whether that's true, whether that's the full story, whether that's not the full story, that's all for question. Like, that's all fine. But if someone's brave enough to come forward and say, this is what happened, this is how I felt, this is what happened to me, and if there's even one other person who's feeling similar but gain some inspiration or hope or insight or something from that conversation, then it needs to be shared. And sort of that's what we're trying to do with this conversation, and that's what we're trying to do all the
Yes.
conversations we have on this podcast.
Yes.
But I am so grateful to you for, you know, like coming out. It wasn't too long ago that it even like you even had to
Yeah.
deal with it, and the fact that you're
Yeah.
happy and ready to come and say, look, this does happen and this is normal and these are the symptoms, that is so important and so powerful. So thank you so much for being willing to come and share. You know, I'm really honored that you've chosen here to come and share the story.
Yes. And this, I feel like this conversation has been so raw, so authentic, so amazing, and so genuine. And I think that definitely whoever is listening will be able to gain something, leave this podcast with something, leave this episode with something, because um, you know, we all just have different journeys, right? We just all have to just respect each other's journeys and
Yes.
respect that everybody is going through something, and their something might look a little bit different to yours, but it's just all about really looking after ourselves and respecting other people's journeys. So
Yes, exactly.
I am so excited to have been a guest on your podcast. I thank you for having me, and I hopefully we'll be able to chat again soon.
Yes, definitely. I'd love to connect more, and definitely I'm sure there's so much more on this topic. And if anyone has questions or anyone has thoughts and you'd love Angelle to answer them, then we can get Angelle back on for a Q&A.
Yeah.
And you know, both of us are very happy to sort of like go through, because this is such a big topic and there's so many other
Yes, it
aspects to this
is.
topic that we
It
can dive
is.
into. So if anyone has any
We just like scraped it.
exactly, we had an hour, so we've covered what we can. But
Yeah.
if anyone's got any thoughts or, you know, wants to feed into the conversation or wants us to continue it, then please let us know, and we're very happy to do that. Would you like to leave the audience with like one final last thought or comment or action, or, you know, something some last takeaway before we sort of end today's episode?
Yes. So, like I had mentioned before, I think my brand is a great starting place if maybe you are looking to really start looking after your self-care, looking after your mental health. You can definitely check me out over at www.healthy, HEALTHY, vibes, VIBESATL.com. You can also follow us over at Instagram or on Facebook, and that is Healthy Vibes ATL. So
We'll
you
drop all
could
the links
definitely,
below the episode
yeah,
as well. So yeah.
awesome. So yeah, definitely connect with me there. I drop a lot of free tips, content. I have products that align with those as well if you're looking for something a little bit more in depth. And I also offer one-on-one self-care kind of strategy sessions where we talk about what's going on with you and create a strategy plan to solve it. So
That
yeah.
sounds awesome. Well, yeah, definitely connect with Angelle if you're looking for more support in that area. And I'll be back very soon with another episode of Back to Health. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you would like any of the links or the show notes, you can follow them in the description below. And for more episodes of the Back to Health podcast, please be sure to follow us on YouTube, or you can follow us on Spreaker, where we host our podcast. Thanks again, and I look forward to joining you for another episode of the Back to Health podcast. Until then, stay healthy, stay happy, and stay informed.